In 2021, a single tweet from Elon Musk moved the price of an entire cryptocurrency by 40% in less than 24 hours. Not a government announcement. Not a central bank decision. A tweet. That moment alone tells you everything about how radically the financial world has shifted in less than a decade and a half. What was once dismissed as internet money for hackers and libertarians now controls a market worth trillions of dollars and touches the lives of hundreds of millions of people worldwide. So how did we get here? How did a technology that almost nobody understood in 2009 become something your grandmother might have heard of, something major banks invest in, something governments are scrambling to regulate, and something that has genuinely changed how people think about money? In the next 10 minutes, you are going to get the full story, from the mysterious origins to the explosive mainstream moment. And there is one turning point in this story that almost nobody credits correctly, a moment that had nothing to do with Bitcoin or Elon Musk, and everything to do with a teenage programmer with a whiteboard idea. Stay with us. To understand where crypto is today, you have to go back to October 2008. The global financial system was melting down. Banks that had existed for over a century were collapsing overnight. Governments were bailing out the same institutions that had just destroyed millions of people's savings. And right in the middle of that chaos, someone using the name Satoshi Nakamoto published a 9-page document on an obscure cryptography mailing list. That document described Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system that would allow people to send money to each other without trusting any bank, any government, or any middleman at all. The timing was not a coincidence. Bitcoin was designed as a direct response to the failures of centralized financial power. For the first 2 years, Bitcoin existed almost entirely in theory. The only people who knew about it were a handful of cryptographers and technology enthusiasts. The first real-world transaction happened in May 2010, when a programmer named Laszlo Hanyecz paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. At today's prices, those pizzas would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But at the time, it was just a fun experiment to prove the technology actually worked. Between 2010 and 2013, Bitcoin started spreading slowly through online communities. Early adopters were mostly anarchists, tech idealists, and people who were deeply skeptical of traditional banking. Then something happened that brought Bitcoin its first wave of mainstream attention, and it was not flattering. The Silk Road, an online black market that used Bitcoin as its exclusive currency, was shut down by the FBI in 2013. Suddenly, Bitcoin was on the front page of newspapers. Most of the coverage was negative, framing crypto as the currency of criminals. But buried inside that negative attention was something powerful. Millions of people heard about Bitcoin for the very first time. Here is what nobody talks about when they trace the mainstream adoption of crypto. The real turning point was not Bitcoin at all. In 2015, a 21-year-old Russian-Canadian programmer named Vitalik Buterin launched Ethereum. Buterin had been writing about Bitcoin since he was 17, but he saw something bigger possible. He wanted a blockchain that could not just move money, but actually run programs. Ethereum introduced the concept of smart contracts, self-executing agreements written in code that required no lawyers, no banks, and no trust between strangers. That single idea transformed cryptocurrency from a digital payment tool into something far more powerful. It became infrastructure. Because of Ethereum, developers suddenly had a platform to build on. Decentralized applications, non-fungible tokens, decentralized finance platforms, and eventually an entire parallel financial system all became possible. Without Ethereum, the crypto boom of the late 2010s and early 2020s would never have reached the scale it did. Buterin's whiteboard idea changed everything. By 2017, crypto had its first true mainstream explosion. Bitcoin climbed from under $1,000 at the start of the year to nearly $20,000 by December. The media could not stop covering it. Retail investors who had never bought a stock in their lives were opening crypto exchange accounts. People were taking out loans to buy Bitcoin. The word blockchain appeared in corporate press releases from companies that had nothing to do with technology. Taxi drivers were giving cryptocurrency tips. It was a full-scale cultural moment. And then it crashed, hard. By the end of 2018, Bitcoin had lost over 80% of its value. The skeptics declared it dead. Several major newspapers ran obituaries for Bitcoin. They had done so before, and they would be proven wrong again. What the crash actually did was clear out the hype and leave behind the builders. Between 2018 and 2020, something quiet but important happened inside the crypto ecosystem. Developers built better infrastructure. Security improved. Custody solutions made it safer for institutional investors to hold crypto assets. Exchanges became more sophisticated and more regulated. The foundation got stronger even as the price stayed low and the headlines moved on. Then 2020 arrived. The pandemic reshaped everything. Central banks around the world printed money at a scale never seen in peacetime history. Interest rates collapsed to near zero. People sitting at home with stimulus checks and brokerage apps started looking for assets that might hold their value when traditional currencies felt uncertain. Bitcoin, with its hard cap of 21 million coins and its built-in resistance to inflation, looked very different to many investors who had ignored it before. Institutional money started moving in. MicroStrategy, a business intelligence company, began converting its entire corporate treasury into Bitcoin. Then PayPal announced it would allow its 375 million users to buy, hold, and sell cryptocurrency directly through its platform. Square did the same. Tesla announced a $1.5 billion Bitcoin purchase. These were not fringe companies or risk-hungry startups. These were pillars of mainstream business making a very public bet on digital assets. The price of Bitcoin reflected this shift. It crossed $20,000 in December 2020, the level that had represented the absolute peak of the 2017 mania. And it kept going. By April 2021, Bitcoin hit $64,000 per coin. The total cryptocurrency market cap crossed $2 trillion. At that point, dismissing crypto as a fringe experiment required ignoring one of the largest asset classes on the planet. But what makes this story truly fascinating is not just the money. It is what crypto revealed about the demand for financial alternatives. In countries with unstable currencies, like Venezuela, Argentina, and Nigeria, crypto was not speculation. It was survival. People were using Bitcoin and stablecoins to protect their savings from government-driven inflation. In Nigeria alone, crypto adoption rates reached some of the highest in the world precisely because people needed something outside the control of their government. The technology that started as a philosophical experiment turned out to solve real problems for real people who had been failed by traditional finance. Governments and regulators, who had largely ignored crypto for over a decade, suddenly had no choice but to pay attention. El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender in 2021, the first country in history to do so. The European Union drafted comprehensive crypto regulation frameworks. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission approved Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, making it possible for ordinary investors to gain exposure through their standard brokerage accounts without ever holding a private key. Crypto had moved from the edge of the financial world to its very center of conversation. The journey from a 9-page white paper published during a financial crisis to a $2 trillion global asset class is one of the most improbable success stories in the history of money. It happened because the technology was genuinely innovative. It happened because traditional finance repeatedly disappointed people in ways that made alternatives appealing. It happened because a teenage programmer imagined something bigger than digital cash. And it happened because millions of ordinary people around the world decided that a different kind of financial system was worth believing in and worth building. Cryptocurrency going mainstream was not a single moment. It was a slow accumulation of broken trust, brilliant engineering, speculative fever, institutional credibility, and genuine human need. And if history is any guide, this story is nowhere near its final chapter. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Trend Now Daily for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.